Hey everybody, welcome to Sid's Little Corner of the Internet. We've got another Transformers review coming your way. This time around, we're going to be taking a look at the Transformers Legacy Prime Universe Deluxe-Class Decepticon Knockout. So as we always do, let's go ahead and take a quick look at that packaging. Starting right up top, you've got Transformers Legacy. There's your big gaping hole. You've got Knockout in his alt mode looking really cool right there. He is Knockout, Transformers Legacy Deluxe-Class. You got some artwork over there, that Decepticon Legacy artwork. Back here you have your product shots. He converts in 18 steps. Parents. And then down here you have all your warnings, and the baby is sad because the baby doesn't like Decepticons. Over here you've got some really cool artwork of that bot mode and his head. It looks really good. And then down here you've got additional information if you choose to read that. So that is it for the packaging. Let's go ahead and crack this guy open and see what came inside that box. Behold, laid out here before you is everything that came inside that box. And we'll start over here with your little sheet of warnings, yay. And then you have your instruction booklet, also yay. And that leaves you with the two accessories that you see right here in the middle. And I think for a deluxe class, these accessories are pretty good. They're a little weird, but we'll talk about that. So we'll start over here with this piece, and it can be whatever you want it to be, but in this configuration, typically speaking, it is a gun of whatever kind you want it to be. So it's just gray molded plastic, but it looks pretty good. You do have a lot of ribbing and hollow areas going on here, but this kind of looks like on a barrel of a gun, just to keep that barrel cool, just to keep it perforated. So they do have it on both sides, so you've got some symmetry there. You do have a couple of 5mm ports, which is helpful. The odd thing about this, though, is if this is a gun, this is the tip. This is not blast effect compatible, so that's a bit of a bummer. It's just too bulbous, too big. Yeah, so it kind of bites. But anyway, you have that, and then you've got a little bit of good detail down there in that handle. And then you have the other piece here, which you can use for a couple of different ideas. I mean, you can use this as a shield. You can use this also as a weird-looking gun, or maybe like a knife, a stabby thing. You could do some stabbing with it. And then you've got a 3mm port there, and then a 5mm port, and then of course you have your 5mm peg down there, and then you've got this port in the back. Now the port in the back is so you can combine these two pieces together to make his signature Trident. So you just take this, you do have this little notch right here, so you can't really install it this way, you have to install it this way. And you just take it in, plug it in, and then voila, you have his Trident. And I think it looks pretty good. And then that's what this is utilized for right here, is you can just plug this right into his hand, so he holds it like this. And he's looking all Aquaman with his Trident. So yeah, I think that's pretty cool. I do like these. I like the fact that you can combine them. I like the fact that you can use them separately as well. So overall, as far as accessories go, I think he's doing okay. So that is it for everything that came inside the box, except for Mr. Knockout himself. So let's bring him in for his close-up. Here he is, Mr. Vane himself, the Decepticon who, when he's in his car mode, doesn't slow down for anything except to catch his own reflection because he looks that good. This is Knockout. So let's bring him in and take a nice look at this guy, and we'll start right up here with his head. And I think they've done a fine job here. This is a good-looking head sculpt. I miss his smirk. I feel like he should be smirking. So that's a little bit of a disappointment for me, but I think that the face itself looks really good, and you've got all this sculpt work even on the side. I think is pretty well done. And looking up here, we'll see all this in the car mode as well, but you've got some good details going on there. And you've got that Decepticon logo, and then this nice paint on the grill. I think it looks pretty good. Coming down, you've got those silver abs and the bright red or maroon crotch. And then not a lot going on here for those upper legs, but you get down to the lower legs, and you've got tons of detail there. I think they come together looking pretty good. I would have liked to have seen, you know, maybe a splash of a different kind of paint down here to break up just all this maroon that's going on. But yeah, he's really not bad looking at all, as he should be. He's supposed to be a good looking car and a good looking bot, right? So coming over to the side, you do have a little bit of a slab of that rear quarter panel just hanging off the side there. Now, you can do what you want here. Now, you see they've got some sculpt work in there. if you want, you could just kind of leave these the way they were. You know, I don't think that looks awful. I really don't. But per the instructions, they want you to have him like this. I mean, you could probably also take it and go that direction with it if you wanted to. Really up to you. So, but the instructions do specifically call out for this orientation like that. All right, so moving up to the sides, I think he fills out pretty well. I like what they've done here with the wheels on the other side, and then just this sculpt work in that hub area, so he doesn't look so hollow in the chest. So looks pretty good right there. Now you get up here to the arms. The arms up here look good. I like what they've done. Good sculpt work here, but then you get up to the underneath part, and then you've got just a bad case of those hollow areas for the fists. I would have liked to have had a panel there, something, you know. I don't know how much that costs, how much it would have added, but gosh, that would have gone a long way to fill that hollow area out, because he looks good everywhere else, really, but gosh. Anyway, all right, so coming around to the back, he does have that backpack where most of the car just collapses up right there, but I think it's pretty slim overall. It doesn't really hinder anything. It gets out of the way fairly well. The only time you're really going to run into this literally is when you're trying to move that waist, and then you're going to have to just lift that up out of the way. Now this doesn't lock in, so you know, just be aware of that. And if you look up underneath there, you know, you're going to get a little bit of hollow area going on, but I think he looks all right. And then coming down here to the legs, well, first of all, let's get that full. There he is. So that backpack makes him look a little chunky in the back. He definitely looks a little more svelte in the front. So you're rarely going to see him from this direction anyway, but he is kind of a chunky monkey with that big old backpack. But coming on down to those legs, got some good sculpt work there, and then you do have these big hollow areas right here. Now they're in black. They're hard to see, but they're there, and they're still a disappointment. So again, some panels, something would have been nice right there to fill those in. So, but overall, I really, really like the way this guy looks. I think he just fits the role of Knockout. He looks good. So let's go ahead and move on to the articulation and talk about this guy. And I think he does everything just fine. He's not amazing here, and you're not going to miss anything. He's just right up the middle as far as articulation goes, what we expect in a deluxe class figure nowadays. So his head's on a ball joint, so you do get a little bit of up, you do get a little bit of down. You can get a little bit of that side look, and then of course you can turn the head all the way around if you want to. Shoulders, you come up that far, and then you twist all the way around. I do want to mention that at least this area is filled out, so that's good. And then at the elbows, you're going to get right at 90, and then you have bicep rotation up here. And then at the wrists, the only thing you get is just that wrist rotation where you're going to flip that in. You do get waist rotation. Just be aware of the backpack back here when you're turning this. You're just going to, you know, need to clear that. You might run into it, so just something to be aware of there. And then down here at the legs, you get a decent amount of split. You're really never going to need much more than that, so I think that's more than enough. And what's limiting him here is just where he's running into himself with this part of the thigh hitting this part right up here of the pelvis. So kicking forward, you kick forward that far, which again, it's okay. You're going to get the job done with this. That's not a problem. And kicking backward is more than you get with most. And he could go a little bit further, but he just starts running into his backpack. You do get thigh rotation, so take that wherever you need to go. You do have a bit of a hollow area here to mention, but at least they put a rib in there that kind of gives him that mechanical look, so there's a piston or something in there, so I'm not too concerned about that. Now down here at the knees, it's a little tricky, because if I really have any complaints on this figure, it's just that the tabs that hold the knees in are kind of weak. It takes very little to pop those out right there. So this is actually for transformation. This is not for articulation. So technically you're supposed to have that tabbed in, and then you can bring the knee up to just under 90 degrees. Now, of course, if you want to untab this, you can, and then you can get yourself one of those. So take advantage of it if you want to, but technically at that point, you've pulled his leg apart, and I don't know if he feels pain, but I'm going to guess he does. All right, so down here at the feet, you do have toes. That's as far up as they'll go, but then they'll go that far down mostly for transformation, but you can use those as well too if you want to get him in that kind of kneeling pose like that. Then his foot will be flat for you, so you can do something like that. And then he does have good ankle tilt, so you can take that almost 90 degrees right there for the ankle tilt. Nothing else on the foot moves up or down except for the toe, and it would have been nice if he would have had a longer heel spur, or maybe one that flipped out, or something that you could use in conjunction with this toe to move up and down to get him a little more posability. But you're not really going to miss it, and for the most part the guy's pretty stable. It doesn't take a whole lot to get him posed and set up and ready to roll. So now that we've got the details and the articulation out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the accessories portion here. We'll throw some blast effects on the guy and give him his accessory and accessories, and we'll have a party from there. Alright, so here he is all accessorized up with all those blast effects being utilized, or those blast effect ports being utilized, and as you can see, you can have a pretty good time with this guy. I am a little bit bummed about the blast effect compatibility with the weapons. It sure would have been nice if you could have put some on the tips to, you know, make it look like they're being fired, but as it stands right now, you've got some on the side and on the top where it looks like you can have, you know, some kind of energy discharge, you know, where the weapons are just being overloaded. So, you know, I guess from an imaginative play standpoint, you could take advantage of that. And you do have the ability to have the rocket boots, which is always great. And then you've got some extra ports here. I don't care that he's a Decepticon. That's still Starscream shooting him in the back there. And then you've got those ports on his arms as well. So you can take full advantage of this guy and you can have a really good time. And he does, as you can see, have that 3mm port for a flight stand right there just under his butt that you can take advantage of as well. So yeah, you can definitely have some fun with this guy, no doubt about it. So just wanted to show this to you guys so you could see all the things that you could potentially do in his bot mode. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the transformation. We'll get him transformed into his really cool alt mode and take a look at him from there. Boy, I gotta say, he really does make for a good looking alt mode. His vanity is well placed. This is a good looking car. I do really like what they've done here. So you can see the really nice sculpt work. He's even got that fastback kind of look in that rear window. The biggest complaint that I would have in this mode are those mushroom pegs. They're almost subtle enough that you don't notice, but then once you notice, it kind of ruins the illusion. But everything else looks really good on this guy. I like the paint going up the side. I would have liked to have seen them give a little bit more paint in the back. So he could have used some applications back here for sure. But he does have some of those nice looking exhaust tips and everything going on back there. And then he's got a couple of 5mm ports that you can take advantage of. But the front end is absolutely on point. I really like it. You've got that little Decepticon logo. You've got all this paint right up here that we saw in his bot mode. So he comes together really, really well. And I went ahead and I just left his weapon on there so you could see him with the weapon storage. Really, there's nothing to it. You just take the weapon off, and then you have a very nice looking car without the weapon. And I think I do prefer him this way. Obviously, the weapon storage is what it is. Rarely is it ever elegant for the Transformers in their alt modes. So nothing major there. But yeah, this is a sleek, cool looking car that I do very much like. So let's go ahead and just bring him in for a little bit of a close-up here. Just looking at that top. So he doesn't quite come together 100% perfectly there. There's just a little bit of a gap. You can smush and then it just goes right back. It's not awful. And from the bottom, that's what he looks like there. So all comes together pretty good, hides everything. You can see the top of his head right there, so it's nothing major. But yeah, I think he looks nice. Like I said, right back here, he could have used a little bit of paint. But other than that, no, this is good looking car mode. So let's go ahead and we'll put the weapon back on. We'll throw some blast effects on him, and we'll give you a little bit of an idea of what he looks like when he's all accessorized and blast effected up. And there you go. He is fully accessorized with the utilization of every blast effect port that's available, plus an extra. This tip is technically not a blast effect port, but I want a rocket car. If I'm going to have a weapon on a car, I want to have a rocket car. So doggone it, I'm going to figure out a way to use it. And it stays on there pretty securely. So I think that'll work just fine. But you can see it's not a lot in his vehicle mode. Really, majority of it is focused on the weapon, but you can still get away with some stuff. I don't know exactly what you would want to do here, but if you have a nice imagination, you're going to have some fun with this guy for sure. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into those comparisons, and we'll take a look at him against some other alt modes. For our first alt mode comparison, I figured it only made sense to bring in some red cars. So this is the G1 Throttlebot Chase. Our next comparison is our representative from the Studio Series line. This is the Studio Series number 71 Dino. This next comparison is from the War for Cybertron series. This is the Earthrise Runabout. Moving right along to our next comparison, this adorable little guy right here is Knockout. This is the Legend Scaled Knockout from the Transformers Prime universe. And for our final alt mode comparison, this is two Knockouts side by side. So of course this is the Legacy Knockout. And over here is that original Transformers Prime Knockout that we got when that show was out, circa 2012, something like that. So you can see he's just a little bit smaller. We're going to take a minute here to just focus on the similarities and the differences. So I just think this is a really cool comparison to take a little bit of time with, because of this reimagining of this Knockout is pretty cool. So you can see these guys from this view here, and if we take a look at them from the back, you can see some similarities there as well, but some differences as well. So yeah, both of these are really cool cars. Really like them both. Like what they've done here though, for sure. Alright, so there we go. That's going to do it for the alt mode comparisons. So let's get Knockout transformed back into his bot mode. We'll take a look at some comparisons there. For that first robot mode comparison, this is the G1 Throttlebot Chase. Next up is the Studio Series number 71 Autobot Dino. Representing the War for Cybertron line, this is the Earthrise Decepticon Runabout. He's tiny, but he still looks good. This is the Legends scaled knockout from the Transformers Prime universe. For our next comparison, this is the Deluxe-Class knockout figure that came out when the Transformers Prime cartoon was on, circa 2012. And for our final robot mode comparison, this is the Transformers Prime knockout from the Transformers Red line or RED line. So this is a non-transformable, just an action figure, but it's meant to be as cartoon accurate as possible. So you can see, cartoon accuracy over here versus really cool engineering and design over here in that Legacy figure. That's going to wrap up the bot mode comparisons. So let's go ahead and get into those final thoughts. So there you have the Transformers Legacy Deluxe-Class Knockout. And I think overall this is a really nice figure. I think he's a lot of fun to play with. He looks really good in his alt mode. He looks pretty decent in his robot mode. And I think he's just going to be a good addition to the collection here. I think he's worthy of that Legacy line addition. So let's go ahead and dig into it a little bit and talk about the reasons why. And we'll start with the aesthetics. Overall, this is a good looking figure. No doubt about it. His bot mode is good, but his alt mode looks wonderful. The alt mode, well, both modes really could have used a little bit more paint, primarily in the bot mode to break up that monotony of all that red, all that maroon that we're seeing. Would have been nice to have had a couple of different colors there, particularly on the front of his legs, somewhere around there. And then in that alt mode, if they could have done something with the rear end, painted some tail lights on there, brake lights, something like that, just to add a splash of color, I think that would have gone a long ways. Now, I do have a couple of issues. Issue number one, particularly in the bot mode, is you have a lot of these hollow areas. You have the hollow areas in his forearms, the backs of his legs, the insides of his legs. I understand that we're dealing with a deluxe class price point here, but man, it would sure be nice if we could have some panels to cover up those hollow areas. That would have really gone a long way. And in the alt mode, in the car mode, everything looks great there, except they've opted for those stupid mushroom pegs on the front wheels. They almost get away with it because they're subtle, but they're there, and once you notice them, you can't unsee them, and that's just really disappointing. We would have had an almost perfect alt mode, in my opinion, if it wasn't for those mushroom pegs. So overall, I think he's pretty decent. I'm going to give him an 8 out of 10 on aesthetics. Moving on to the articulation. The best word that I can use to describe the articulation on this figure is adequate. He's adequate in everything that you need. There's nothing here that's outstanding, and there's nothing that you're really going to be hurting for. He just gets the job done, but it's not flashy. So I guess a couple of wish list items would have been nice if, of course, we could have had that ab crunch. And in the heels, if he could have had a longer heel spur, something that flipped out, and or a movable heel to help with that overall posing, because you can move those toes. But something in that heel area I think would have been helpful. I think he's just a little short in the heel area here. But other than that, he gets the job done. He's perfectly adequate. He's not amazing. So I'm going to give him an 8 out of 10 on articulation. Moving on to the accessories. I like the accessories here. I like the fact that you have a pretty decent amount of effects compatibility. The one thing that does puzzle me is when you break them into the two pieces like I have here, this is the gun. This tip is not effects compatible. It's too large. It's too bulbous. So you can't really throw an effect on there, and that's kind of a bummer, but you can throw them on the sides. So it would have been nice if we could have had something there that would have allowed the blast effect compatibility. But the fact that you can separate these two pieces and have them configured like I have here, or put them together and make his Trident, I think is really cool. So I do enjoy the accessories that he was provided here. So I'm going to give him an 8 out of 10 on accessories. And taking us to quality, I have no issues here. All the joints are tight. I don't have any joints to complain about. Everything comes together and does what it's supposed to do. He tabs together pretty well in his alt mode. He is a little bit of a gap, has a little bit of a gap in the back area, but it's nothing major. The paint looks good everywhere. The sculpt work looks good. His accessories, he came with what he was supposed to. I have no complaints here. So, I'm going to give him a 9 out of 10. He's not perfect by any means, but I'm going to give him a 9 out of 10 in overall quality. I think they've done a fine job here, and we don't have any crazy, weird quality escapes coming out of the factory, which is a pleasant surprise. So taking us to our last bullet, which is overall value. I picked this figure up from BigBadToyStore.com. This was a pre-order. So I can only assume that this figure, once he hits shelves in retail outlets, he's going to be a little bit less expensive than what I paid for him. And I think that the less you can pay, the better, of course. But like I say, this was a pre-order that arrived from BigBadToyStore.com, and it was $26 US. I think for me, the value's there. I really enjoy this figure. The more I play with him, the more I like him. I really, really like that alt mode. He really is a knockout in alt mode. So I do think that the value is there for the figure, but I think if you can pick him up for less than $26, if you can find him on a shelf in a retail outlet, then by all means, be sure to pick him up. So I'm going to give him, because of that $26 price point that I paid, I'm going to give him a 7 out of 10. I don't think that he's worth much more than that, but I do think that MSRP is more than fine for this figure. So that brings us to our grand total. Out of a possible 50 points, the Legacy Knockout gets 40 out of 50, which puts him at 80%. So this guy's going to be an easy recommend for me. I liked Knockout in the Transformers Prime universe. I liked him in his Transformers Prime figure that we got a decade or so ago, and I like him here. I think this guy's a lot of fun, and I think he's got a great shelf presence. Looks really good in both of his modes, and has all kinds of playability here. So with that, that's going to wrap up the review. I hope you guys got some good information. I hope you were entertained. And if you haven't already done so, be sure to hit the like button. Be sure to subscribe. And if you feel like it, leave us a comment. Let me know what you think about this guy or anything else going on. So until we see you guys in the next review, take care.